In the Know, a radio program talking to the newsmakers in Ogle, Lee, DeKalb counties and beyond, keeping you in the know. Here's your host, Charles Van Horn.
Good morning, and joining us on the phone, Director of the Reagan Mass Transit District, Greg Gates. Good morning.
Good morning.
The Reagan Mass Transit District, formerly the Lee Ogle Transportation System. I'm almost singing along with the jingle when I say that. You guys are expanding. Obviously, you did the name change in an effort to show that you're a more broad reach than what you used to be. And in July, you met with some folks from Winnebago County, right?
Yes. Actually, the conversation for what has currently been a gap in the services for rural Winnebago has been there probably for a period of time that goes well past what my working knowledge of that service base currently is. But basically, we were approached, I think, a couple of years ago or going on a couple of years ago about potentially assisting with providing rural public transportation services for basically the western portion of Winnebago County. And so we've been working through basically some of the paperwork associated with making that happen. And on July 17th, we actually had a chance to host a meeting of some Winnebago County board members and Winnebago County staff come down here to our DIXON location. And basically, we talked about what that provision of rural public transit for rural Winnebago would look like. And now we're in the process of basically coming to, I would say, an agreement, like a memorandum of understanding type of agreement between our organization and Winnebago County to provide that service. And then, of course, we still need to go through the Illinois Department of Transportation to get final approval and sign off. But hopefully, keeping fingers crossed, we'll have some service in the rural Winnebago County area, I would say hopefully by springtime, and see where it goes from there. But we're very excited about providing that service to that portion of Winnebago County, which currently does not have that rural transit option.
So what would it look like in Winnebago County? Are we talking point-to-point then, where residents in rural Winnebago County would call Reagan Mass Transit and say, I need to get to this location, can a vehicle be ready? Is it something like that?
It would be very similar to what our operation currently down here in Lee and Ogle Counties is, and that's a demand response. Somebody from rural Winnebago would call in, and they would actually schedule a ride, and we would basically do a curb-to-curb type of thing. We'd pick them up at their home, take them to their destination or destinations, and take them back home when they're done. So it's very similar. A demand response model is what we would be looking to implement in rural Winnebago.
And would this be then partially funded by, obviously, Winnebago County taxpayers then? That would be a contribution to Reagan Mass Transit to help get this underway?
Well, we would be collecting fares, but for the most part, it would be state and federal funding that would be supporting the start of that system. So just like we currently do down here in the Lee and Ogle counties, very similar model with a lot of the funding coming from the state and the feds.
And speaking of Lee and Ogle counties, a lot of discussion over the last couple of months about the opportunities for fixed bus routes in DIXON and in Rochelle. We've talked a bit about the Rochelle plans, but I just want to ask a bit because I'm not as familiar with DIXON. Is there talks for a fixed bus route in DIXON, and how is the planning process for that going?
Well, we were very fortunate. We had a couple of pots of money through IDOT to actually look at the feasibility of creating fixed routes, both in Rochelle as well as in DIXON. And we were able to actually hire, through a selective bidding process, the same organization to run both of those feasibility studies at the same time. And so we've been very lucky in terms of, being able to look at Rochelle, but also at DIXON at the same time. And I think from a very basic perspective, we all thought from the beginning that, yes, both of those communities would have a feasibleness to be able to support a fixed route, and that's what the final report seems to be indicating. And in DIXON, at least, in terms of that model, it looks as though we would potentially have two fixed routes that would be running on a regular basis and providing, that in-town presence for public transit into Petunia City. So very excited about being able to, get to the point with a final report. I know that we've been giving some public presentations at not only the Rochelle City Council, but also the Lee County Board as well as the DIXON City Council, and sharing those findings. And hopefully we'll have the final report out within the next month or so and be able to actually share that fully with everyone concerned.
And Rochelle's presentation not that long ago in front of the Rochelle City Council explained how there would be a fixed route, but then perhaps there would be sort of these jumping off points, perhaps to areas where there is need on occasion, but not every day. And they also talked about servicing the industrial areas on the south edge of town and how that sometimes doesn't really work with a fixed bus route due to the different schedules. I just want to chime in and ask the question, it changes from clockwise to counterclockwise. And I know that's not a major deal, but for me, I think it'd be fun if it just ran clockwise one day and then counterclockwise the next, just to confuse people that the absolute maximum, that what they thought would be a 50-minute ride from one location to another turns into a 40-minute ride.
It would be one of those backward type days that we oftentimes hear. Instead of eating breakfast, you're eating dinner.
Exactly.
And when you're eating dinner, you're eating breakfast.
No, it's going to be clear that when Rochelle does get a route, it's going to be consistently in one direction. That's for sure. And it looks like it's going to be going through neighborhoods to meet the demands of people. And I guess one of the things they brought up at the council meeting, and you were there, where they talked about the different size of the routes in regards to how many they would run a day. And then there was, of course, the cost associated with that. There was talks of a limited hours really during the day and then some that extended that into the evening. Do you get a lot of calls for rides later in the evening, or is it sort of one of those cart before the horse issues that you don't have a lot of rides late in the evening because you don't offer rides late in the evening?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, our service base is basically 6A to 6P, and so I'm opening up a service option where you could have more evening, and I would like to, in the future, do obviously more weekend rides. You open up that conversation, and I think you're going to have people responding to that, now being fully aware that, I don't have to limit it to 6A to 6P, Monday through Friday. It could be a little more robust in terms of, I always say that our urban and our small urban partners, our colleague organizations, they have obviously more expanded options for people in their communities. Yeah, we're jumping into the whole conversation in terms of what a fuller or more robust conversation about potentially evening or even weekend options for people. My colleagues who are running either an urban or a small urban operation, more in the city areas, have obviously that full operational convenience to offer to their riders. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to do the same thing, and I think, if you offer it, will they come? Will they ride? I think there's probably a pretty decent chance that yes would be the answer to that. I think the more people become aware of what our service options are, currently obviously 6A to 6P, but if we're expanding those to more evening hours or weekend hours, I think we're going to find that people are going to start moving in that direction and hopefully, grow that Reagan Mass Transit District even further in terms of how many riders we're providing rides to on an annual basis.
Greg Gates joining us, Director of Reagan Mass Transit District. I've suggested in the past, too, that the fixed bus routes get silly names. And I was thinking they need to do like Ronald Reagan-esque names. I think you need to have a bus called the Gipper. I think you need to have like the Nancy Reagan bus, maybe a Tip O'Neill bus. I'm just thinking 80s politicians might be a fun way to name all the buses. That's something you guys have considered, or? Well,
I actually like putting, more like animals on some of the buses.
Yeah.
We've talked about that in the past. So, you get the kids seeing that, there's an otter or there's some type of fox that's indigenous to this area actually represented on those buses, which is what some of the urban partners that we work with have on their buses. But, it grabs people's attention. Hopefully just some of the colorful schemes that we have on the side of our buses right now are also grabbing more of the public's attention instead of seeing the white buses that they became so familiar with in the past. And now we're using some of the orange and the blues and so forth. And actually, some of our buses have complete advertisement wraps on them. Again, showing a different look to those buses than what has normally been seen in some of the rural areas.
If you're going to go with animal themes, you need to give nicknames to the animals then and sort of combine my idea with yours. I think you do a chimpanzee, but you name it Bonzo.
I think it would be very creative.
There you go.
Definitely,
there you go. Reagan Mass Transit District, thank you for joining us. Again, you guys are going to potentially be expanding into Winnebago County to serve the rural residents there. Are there any other areas that you guys would like to expand services to maybe help out people who don't have access to public transportation?
At this moment, probably not, but we'd entertain conversations in the future. I've told people that I just like, now that I'm in Reagan Mass Transit District as the operational name and we're moving forward as our own local government entity, it's getting our organization on solid footing and moving forward. And obviously the next piece that's pretty substantial is obviously the rural Winnebago piece. And then, we also have some other projects in the hopper, including some construction of a secondary location in Oregon that's next on the agenda to complete. So we're staying busy for sure, and we'll always entertain some conversations about potential expansion in the future, but we have some things that we definitely need to get to in the interim before we get too far along in that conversation.
Greg Gates, Reagan Mass Transit District, always moving forward. Indeed. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning. Joining us on the phone, the commander of Oregon VFW Post 8739, Commander Matt Alford. Good morning.
Good morning. How's it going?
Going great. You guys have a special event coming up that'll involve folks supporting veterans and probably bringing their appetite coming up on October 6th.
Yeah, we're doing a breakfast that morning. We're going to have just pancakes and eggs and sausage, and all the proceeds are going to go to supporting the VFW and veterans, and that'll take place before the parade starts at the Audubon Parade Festival.
Yeah, that's going to be a big deal. Again, starting around 8 a.m., going to like 10:30 at the Oregon VFW. Always great when these organizations get together and make a breakfast. Are you going to be there cooking or helping clean up? What will your role be that morning?
I'll probably be bouncing around quite a bit. Usually when we do it, I help a little bit in the kitchen. I help set up tables and tear down and stuff like that.
Now, when you do the pancakes, you're doing them on a big griddle, right?
Yeah, we got the big flat top griddle in the back.
How much fun is it to make pancakes on that? Because really, let's be honest, you just get to throw them down like 20 at a time and scoop them all back up.
It goes a lot faster than doing it at home, that's for sure.
And, of course, for a good cause as well. Big breakfast, Audubon Parade going to be happening in Oregon at the same time, so it's going to be busy. And definitely make way over to the Oregon VFW. Going to be a free will donation, right?
Yes, sir. So, come and pay what you can, pay what you want to. If you just happen to need a free breakfast, it's there too. So
it's going to be happening from 8 a.m. to 10:30 at the Oregon VFW. You can find them 1310 West Washington Street. It's a parking lot that will have room for a couple of cars at least for a while that day. Oregon fills up big for that festival, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Come parade day, it usually gets pretty packed, whole town.
So make a stop at the Oregon VFW. If somebody wants to find out more about the Oregon VFW, they can stop in there and ask questions and talk about some of the programs that you guys do to support veterans, right?
Yes, sir. If somebody wants to call the VFW, we get the answering machine. Otherwise, we have somebody there Monday through Friday from 4 to 8. And
you guys also have a bunch of events and other fundraisers happening throughout the year. Of course, follow the Oregon VFW on Facebook. Commander Matt, thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for listening to this week's In the Know. The program returns next week at this time with another great conversation with someone from your community.